Hello, ghosties. You're listening to Not My Ghost.
Not My Problem. I'm Kelly.
And I'm Jen.
Whether you're a skeptic, a true believer, or somewhere in between, join us for a journey into the unknown.
Because remember, when it comes to the paranormal, it may not be our problem,
but it's certainly someone's problem.
I wanted to let our ghosties know that this is the second time we are recording this episode. The first time we recorded it, we had some audio issues, but at the beginning of the episode, we kind of did a really nice tribute to Kelly's dog Boogie, who passed away, and I didn't want to cut that out or attempt to recreate it. So we do apologize for the first couple of minutes of this episode. The audio quality is going to be kind of bad on my end, because I think there was an issue with my mic. But then we'll come back into it for the re-record. We just want you to hear the loving tribute to Kelly's wonderful dog, Boogie. So please enjoy, and we'll be back in a minute.
Today we are dedicating this episode to my dog, Boogie.
Booger not.
I know that you're listening to this episode. Well, this episode comes out on January 8th, but we are recording this episode on December 5th. And on December 3rd, I lost my dog that I've had for 14 and a half years, that I got when he was 8 weeks old. And besides his unconditional love and joy that he would bring to the life, and companionship and snuggles and everything that he gave to me. I know that, I went to a rescue day and rescued him, but no, I needed him, and he had a big role to fulfill, and he did it well.
Yes, he did.
And from watching him just not be the smartest dog, when I got Boogie, I signed him up for Jen's puppy training class. And that's how Jen and I met. So Jen, during the class one time, had said that if you put a blanket over a dog's head and they get out of the blanket within 3 seconds, that's a sign of intelligence. So all of the dogs in the class, we did this test. And every single dog, as soon as you put the blanket on their head, they got it off immediately. And then we put the blanket on Boogie's head. And he just stood there and then walked into a wall with the blanket still on his head.
Oh, booger.
He was not the smartest dog, but he was my dog. And
he was.
We tried to teach him to roll over, and he just wouldn't lay on the ground and roll over. He would just turn around, like run in circles. And you know what? To him, he was rolling over, and he got a treat every time, because when I said roll over, he did what he thought roll over was.
Exactly. Oh.
So, besides everything that Boogie gave to me himself, he also gave me Jen.
Oh, yeah. He was such a good dog, and so sweet and loving and caring. And he brought you and I together, which you can never replace that.
No. Jen and I have known each other for 14 and a half years because I signed up for the puppy classes.
Yeah.
And over 14 and a half years, our friendship's had highs, it's had lows, it's had really highs, it's had really lows. And all of that just ended up in us really coming together as complete human beings and having a beautiful friendship that I wouldn't have if it wasn't for him.
Oh.
And we wouldn't have this podcast, and we wouldn't have this community.
Yeah.
So he gave me more than I even realized that he gave me.
Yeah, he did. He absolutely did. He was a great dog, and I'm going to miss him so much. I wish I would have been able to see him one more time, but it was his time, and he's over that rainbow bridge now.
I just can't believe he's gone.
I know.
the house feels empty. I expect him to be laying in my chair in the morning when I wake up. And we had gone out last night to look at Christmas lights. And whenever we would come home as a family, we would just open the door and he would just run out and he would do zoomies in and out of the house. And he wasn't there. So his absence is felt. And I love him.
Yeah.
And that is our happy, cheery, scripted, unscripted banter.
Yeah.
So far.
And now, back to your regularly scheduled program.
Guess where I am?
Where are you, Kelly?
Right next to you.
Oh my God, I can touch you.
I can touch you.
We're touching each other.
Yes, don't get any ideas.
Not like that.
Get your minds out of the gutter.
Sickos. We're touching each other like friends.
That's right.
Well, Kelly is here in St. Augustine.
I am.
We are together at last.
Together forever. Isn't that the song in Annie?
Oh, I haven't seen Annie in so long.
Yeah.
I don't even know. We hope that this turns out okay because we are recording on one mic. Instead of two because technology sucks and I can't figure out how to do two.
And we have somewhere we need to be later.
We do have somewhere we need to be later. Do you want to tell them, Kelly?
I think you should tell them.
Okay. Well, we are going to do a paranormal investigation of the old jail in St. Augustine, Florida.
I am excited.
I am so excited. I cannot wait. We have not investigated together since, I don't even know. It's been years.
Yeah, it's been
so
a long time.
So long. So yeah, we have this investigation booked and we're going to go do this tonight. And then after, we are going to give you an episode about the old jail and its history and hauntings and our investigation.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're really excited.
I think it's going to be a lot of fun. And I've never been there before. So I'm really excited to go.
I have only been there once, but it was on like another ghost tour where we stopped in and it was more of a theatrical performance that they put on to kind of give you some of the history.
Okay.
But we weren't in there very long. So I don't know very much about it.
Well, I'm excited because I've never been to a place like specifically looking for paranormal activity in a place that is reported to be as so haunted.
Yeah.
And as soon as we're done recording this episode, we're going to go to the old jail.
We are going to the investigation right after we're done recording.
Yep.
Well, maybe not right after, but because it's late.
Cup of coffee and then maybe after that.
Cup of coffee. Because right now we're drinking wine. So wine first.
Wine first.
And then coffee. And then investigating.
Not too much wine, though.
No, just a glass while we record.
Technically, I've had two because I knocked one all over Jen's living room.
She did.
It was a test glass.
It was the test glass. Yes. Well, we are recording this episode for the second time because, as I said in the beginning, we had some mic issues with the first one. I think, for whatever reason, I think my audio didn't connect to my mic and it was connected to my headphones. So as you probably heard in the Boogie tribute, I sounded very far away and like I was underwater.
I haven't heard it. So.
You haven't. I was talking to the listeners.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll hear it when I review the episode after it's done being edited.
Yes, you will. After I piece all of this madness together.
Yes.
And hopefully we don't have to record this a third time.
Oh, please no.
Yeah.
I'd like to remind the listeners of our drinking game. Anytime I say the word okay, you take one drink. If I say all right or all righty, you take two drinks.
Yeah, that's our new drinking game when it is my episode. So it is my episode, if anyone was wondering. Oh, and welcome into our scripted, unscripted banter.
Welcome.
Oh, God, I just...
What?
I forgot Ellen was in here.
Oh, were you like, oh, how'd she get in here?
Yes. I totally was. So, yeah, Kelly brought Ellen to my house.
I did.
Yeah, so she's here, and she's been in my living room all day. And while we record in the bedroom, I told Kelly to bring Ellen in here. And then we spent like 30 minutes trying to figure out how to connect our mics. And I forgot she was in here and I just turned around and she was sitting on the bed. So I got a little freaked out.
Yeah, because she didn't walk in here. I did, in fact, carry her.
That's good. We have had a little activity today with her.
Some weird things happening.
Yes. Some noises, some REM pod interaction, but I think the weirdest was my blinds opening by themselves.
Yes, I did not pay any attention to the blinds in the house, so I do not know if they were opened or closed.
They weren't open.
But Jen says she never opens them, so I believe her.
Yeah. I have a balcony door and there are blinds on it that you can open. And the last time that those blinds were open was when I used to have a money tree plant that died because it didn't get enough sun, because I do not live on the sunny side of my apartment building. And I used to open the blinds trying to get it any amount of sunlight. And that has been a couple months now since I finally gave up and threw it away.
It's interesting. We were eating lunch.
Yeah.
And Jen looked at me and said, "Did you open the blinds?" No.
Yeah. So they were open. And then the little,
the wand that you twist to open it.
That's the word.
Yeah.
The wand that you twist to open the blinds was swinging back and forth. And now that has happened a couple of times since, but the blinds have not again reopened. So can't really explain that.
Right. Oh, right. Two drinks.
Okay, Callie, I have a question for you.
Awesome.
My question for you is, if you were a ghost, what would be your go-to action to haunt people?
Well, I think it would depend on who I was haunting.
Okay.
If I was haunting somebody that I liked, it might be a smell that may remind them of me.
Okay.
Or, I don't know, anything like moving an object that person might associate with me.
Okay.
Or hopefully invoking a calming, loving presence.
Is that supposed to remind people of you?
I hope I'm loving, but I'm not very calm.
No.
I can't tell you how many times I was wandering around Jen's apartment today and she was like, "Just do one thing and then go do the other."
Yes. A couple times.
If I didn't like the person, I think I might start with some psychological torture, maybe nightmares.
Okay.
Then maybe nightmares escalating to the blanket being pulled down while they're sleeping.
That's bad.
Then pulling them off the bed by their ankles.
That's really bad.
Yeah,
I'm glad you like me.
Yeah, and then just whatever my ghostly powers are, however strong they are in the most negative way, we would slowly build up to that.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you. Same type of thing. If I like the person, little reminders, but that's not the fun part. I would do a very slow burn, like all of your typical horror movies that you've ever seen, where the first couple of months, I'm talking really in for the long haul here. First couple of months, just going to be little tiny things like you set your keys down and you turn around and they're not there anymore. They're just slightly moved. Like you're thinking, am I crazy? Did I do that? Little things, object move here and there, but nothing you can really say is paranormal. And then I'll slowly start to escalate where I'll make some more noises and maybe show myself out of the corner of your eye where you have to turn real quick and then I'm gone. And then I'm just going to go full blown fucking poltergeist, chairs stacked on top of each other, things flying around the house. Like it's going to be the slowest burn that anyone has ever seen. And I'm in for the long haul.
So what I'm hearing is you want this person to commit themselves to a hospital thinking they're nuts.
Yes.
And then you stop all activity while they're there. Then they think that the medication is working. Then they get home and you unleash hell.
Absolutely.
That sounds
100%.
Wonderful.
Yes. There are a handful of people that I would love to do that to.
Could I ask a name?
No.
Yeah, there's some politicians I would do it to, but I'm not going to name any names.
No, not going to name names.
No.
Okay, well, I think we have had enough scripted, unscripted banter. Are we ready to get in today's topic?
Yes, we are.
Okay. Today, we are diving into the story where a ghost herself took the witness stand. Well, sort of. This is an incredible true story of how one determined spirit solved her own murder. The Greenbrier Ghost, where supernatural meets true crime. In 1897, a young woman named Zona Hester Shue was found dead in her West Virginia home. At first, her death seemed like a tragic accident. But when Zona's ghost appeared to her mother, she revealed a shocking truth. Her death was no accident at all, but a murder. What happened when a ghost became the star witness of her own murder investigation? Did justice prevail? Did a message from beyond the grave help crack the case? And what happens when the paranormal takes the stand?
I would like to say that I know we have told you this is the second time that we are recording this. But I don't remember much of this story from the first time we recorded it because it's been a while.
It has.
Yeah, and I have when we tell you that we are re-recording something, our reactions to whatever the other person is saying is genuine.
Yeah.
Because we don't remember how we reacted to anything.
No.
We don't always answer the question, the scripted, unscripted banter question.
No, we don't.
Because we have no idea what we said 3 weeks ago. We're in a different headspace.
We
now.
are. Our lives are completely different than what they were 3 weeks ago.
Exactly.
Yeah, 100%. Okay, but before I get into the story, I'm going to give you some random facts about when law and the paranormal mix. So in 1991, you have what is known as the Ghostbusters ruling. And this is Stamboxv versus Ackley. And in this case, a buyer sued the seller for failing to disclose that the house was widely reputed to be haunted, a fact that had been reported in newspaper and local lore. The New York Supreme Court ruled in favor of the buyer, stating that the house's reputation as haunted had diminished its value. This case suggested that paranormal claims could impact real estate transactions.
I would pay more.
Me too. I know we've talked about this before, but I wish there was a haunted Zillow.
It would be great.
It would be. I would just go on and search and Google and look around the haunted Zillow. It would be so much fun.
I'd have to, if I would consider buying whatever house I was at, like viewing that had a lot of activity while I was viewing it, we need to put an offer on this house.
Yeah, agreed. Then in 1993, the Whaley House in San Diego, California, which is often cited as one of the most haunted places in the U.S., was at the center of a lawsuit when a visitor claimed she was injured after fainting during a ghost sighting. The case was dismissed due to a lack of evidence that linked the injury to a supernatural cause, but it highlighted the challenges of addressing paranormal claims in court.
I don't know how you could really enforce a lot of that.
No, because you can't prove it.
And also, it's not my fault if there is a ghost somewhere.
No, it's not.
If I own a house and there's a ghost in it.
I guess in that instance, because I guess if someone else is going to be there, then they should have to sign a waiver, which I think is why in a lot of cases, when you go to paranormal locations, they make you sign waivers.
That's interesting.
Yeah. It'd be interesting to see if we have to sign a waiver tonight.
I didn't have to sign one I don't know if the episode's out yet.
It will be.
Oh, Edinburgh.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Then there is the Curse of Annabelle. Ellen, don't listen. This was in 2017, and a museum displaying the allegedly haunted Annabelle doll was sued by a visitor who claimed the doll caused emotional distress. The lawsuit alleged that the museum failed to warn about the risk of encountering cursed objects. The case was settled out of court, but it did raise some questions about liability when dealing with supernatural themed interactions.
I call bullshit. You're walking into a museum that you know has a lot of messed up paranormal things in it, and then you're going to sue because something messed up and paranormal happened.
Yeah.
Do they make people to see Robert the doll sign a waiver? I don't remember reading in my research about needing to sign a waiver to see Robert.
Yeah, I don't know.
People will literally sue over anything.
They will. Then in 2013, you have the psychic fraud case of Rose Marks. Now, Rose Marks was a self-proclaimed psychic, and she was convicted of defrauding clients of millions of dollars by promising to remove curses and bad spirits. Victims testified that they were manipulated through fear of supernatural harm. Then there was the exorcist murder of Anneliese Michael, and this was in 1976. Anneliese Michael, a young woman in Germany, died after undergoing exorcisms to expel alleged demons. Her parents and priests were charged with negligent homicide. They were convicted of manslaughter and received suspended sentences, highlighting the dangers of mixing religious beliefs with medical neglect.
I definitely think when it comes to exorcisms, you need to make sure that you are not dealing with a actual medical problem. And some of the exorcism practices are so extreme on the human body that it makes me worried when I hear about people that are undergoing an exorcism.
Agreed. Okay. Now let's dive into the story. Zona Hester Shue was born in 1876 in Greenbrier County, West Virginia, to Mary and Jacob Hester. Growing up in rural West Virginia, she lived a quiet life, and little is known about her childhood, beyond the fact that she was raised in a farming family. Now, it is said that everybody loved Zona, that she was known to be very sweet and kind, and the family was known to be very religious and also hardworking and kind. So just generally, people had pretty positive things to say about Zona and her parents and the rest of her family. Mary, the mother, ensured that all of her kids attended church every week, and Mary and Zona were very close and often mistaken as sisters.
That's interesting.
Yeah. Now, Zona was the second oldest out of 7 children, but she was the only girl. So she had 6 brothers.
That had to be rough.
Yeah. And her brothers were very protective of her. So at the age of 16, Zona was allowed a little bit more freedom, where her family was always, like I said, really protective of her. But eventually when she turned 16, she was allowed to go into town with her brothers. Now, again, they lived on a farm. So they would go into town to sell their, farming things. What do farmers sell? I don't know.
Tractors?
Do they sell tractors?
Well,
I wasn't going tractors. I don't think they're going into the town every Saturday to sell tractors, Kelly.
Some farmers also supplement their income by selling farm equipment, but I guess if you mean like crops.
This was in 1876, Kelly.
Oh, yeah, they didn't have a lot of tractors back then, probably. Yeah, you're probably right. Yeah.
I meant more like they were selling, corn, crops, eggs.
Green beans.
Yeah. Meat. Whatever they're farming, they were selling. And probably also buying supplies for the farm. So she was finally allowed to go into town with her brothers. And one day when she was there, she ran into a boy named George Woodridge. And he worked at the mill. And they started dating. They hit it off.
And he was a great guy, right?
So we don't know a lot about George.
No, okay.
But he's not said to be a bad guy.
I said, okay.
Drink. They started dating, and shortly after they started dating, Zona became pregnant.
Oh, back in the 1800s.
Yeah. Now, Zona was 19 at this time, and both families decided that Zona and George were not in a position to get married.
That is unheard of.
Yeah. I agree.
Wow.
And George agreed to pay support and to help pay for the baby and to visit. And they were still dating at this point and having a kid, but they were not being forced to get married. Now, Zona gave birth to a son on November 29th, 1895. Unfortunately, her son did not make it. He died shortly after birth and wasn't even given a name.
Aw.
Yes. Now, this is when things kind of got a little rocky for George and Zona. They kind of split after this, and a little less than a year later, George was married to somebody else.
Oh, that was fast.
Yeah. George moved on pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Wasn't ready to marry his pregnant 19-year-old girlfriend, but, a year later, he was ready to get married. So Zona was grief-stricken. I mean, losing a child and then losing, a man who she thought she loved. She wasn't in a great place. She isolated herself at home for many months. And she finally, after many months of isolation and depression, kind of started to venture back into town again with her family. Now, her family did say that she never really fully bounced back, which who can blame her?
She lost a child.
She lost a child. She lost someone that she loved and, lost as in moved on. But she was also 19. So
very young
for all of this to be happening. It is pretty normal that she would kind of come out the end of this a different person.
Yeah.
And in 1896, so, a little over a year later, she met the new blacksmith in town. And his name, or so he told her, was Edward Trout Shue. Now, Trout had been moving from town to town, kind of bouncing around, looking for work.
That's never a good sign.
Yeah, not really. And Zona fell head over heels, madly in love
right
with
away?
Trout. Yeah, immediately.
That's a run.
Yeah.
If you ever feel that, like head over heels right away, that ain't it.
No.
That's not the one for you. Run.
No. Well, Zona's mother tried to warn her. Mary did not approve of Trout. Mother's instincts were kicking in strong. And she was not a fan of him. And she knew he was bad news and, tried to warn Zona. But despite her mother's disapproval, Zona and Trout were married 2 weeks later.
Wow. 2 weeks later. You can never outright tell your kids, I don't approve of somebody.
Yeah.
Because that's what they do, man. They run out to get married.
Yeah. 2 weeks.
That's insane.
Mm-hmm. So we're going to learn a little bit about Trout now, which, by the way, what a shitty nickname.
Trout?
Trout. That's his nickname.
I guess I wasn't thinking that when you said his name, for some reason, I was thinking Trout was his middle name.
No,
that is a weird nickname.
Who gives somebody a nickname after a fish? Like, what kind of stinky, smelly person must you be to be nicknamed after a fish?
That's a good point.
Yeah, I know. Trout was born in 1861 in Augusta County, Virginia. And he was a blacksmith who had recently moved to Greenbrier County from another part of West Virginia. He was described as a man of average build, unremarkable by outward appearance.
I wonder why she fell hell over heels. She fell hell over heels.
Hell over heels. I don't know, but he was described as unremarkable. And I think that is an amazing insult for someone.
Yeah, I like it.
If someone, instead of saying he's ugly or, unattractive, unremarkable.
I don't even remember you, son.
Yeah, you're just so unremarkable. And he didn't have the best reputation. Trout did have a criminal record, and he served 2 years at the state penitentiary for stealing a horse.
Okay. Would that be, I said, okay, so we got a drink real quick. Would that have been considered Grand Theft Stallion?
Yeah, sure. We'll go with that one, Kelly. So he also was married twice before.
Ah, good sign.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great sign. And we'll get into those details a little bit later. I don't want to give too much away too quickly. Now, Zona, as I said, her mother was very wary of Trout and just said he was possessive, rude, and violent. Not good things to describe the person who married your daughter.
Did she say that to her daughter, or is that how she described him later?
I don't know. I could not find specifics as to when she said those. I know it was said that she did not like him from the get-go.
Okay.
But I don't know if she specifically said those before or after. Mary was very suspicious of the fact that they got married very quickly, which was another reason that kind of led her to disapprove of the match. But as I said, despite her objections, Zona married him. possibly under emotional pressure, or maybe it was just because she just desired companionship. As we said, she had been through a lot of trauma, so she found some guy who was probably love bombing her, and that was all it took. Now, accounts of the marriage suggested that Zona's relationship with Trout was not a happy one from day one.
Oh.
Now,
from day one of meeting or marriage?
Marriage, I would assume.
Well, it's not like that much time went by.
No, it was 2 weeks. Yeah,
marriage, but
there aren't a lot of specific details on their daily interactions, but it was pretty clear to everybody that Trout had an abrasive personality, and there were rumors about domestic disputes. Now, on January 23rd, 1897, which was only 3 months after they got married, so 3 months and 2 weeks after they met, Zona was found dead at the bottom of the stairs leading to the second floor.
That didn't take long.
Nope, it was not very long. Her body was discovered by a neighbor, a boy who was about 11, and he kind of helped out with the family and did some chores for the family. So Andy Jones, which was the neighbor boy's name, was sent to the house by Trout to check on Zona. Now, apparently, Trout went back home every single day for lunch. He didn't live that far, and he went home every day for lunch. But for some reason, this day, he couldn't go home for lunch. So he sent this neighbor boy to go check on his wife.
What? Why would you just randomly send somebody to check on your wife?
Because he wasn't going home.
But was that something that happened back then?
I don't know. Maybe
that just seems weird. Like, okay, then you can't come.
Well, I'm going to play devil's advocate a little bit here. Cell phones were not a thing. Phones weren't really probably the easiest thing.
Maybe he sent the boy to tell her he couldn't come.
It said check on, but it's also possible that, just go check on her, tell her I'm not going to be home, and, make sure she knows that I'm not coming home.
Okay.
When he found her dead, he ran back home where he told his mother, and then they continued back to the blacksmith's place where they found Trout, and they let him know. And when Trout was told, he appeared to be in great anguish, and he ran home, where he gathered his dead wife into his arms and directed that the local doctor and coroner, Dr. George Knapp, be called. When Knapp arrived, Zona's body had been moved to the second floor bedroom by Trout.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm. He had dressed Zona in a high-necked dress to ready her for burial.
That was fast.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Dr. Knapp could tell that Zona was dead, but when he began to try to examine her, Trout cradled her head and sobbed and lashed out whenever the doctor tried to get too close to Zona to do the exam.
Well, what is he hiding?
After a very brief examination, Dr. Knapp concluded that Zona had died of everlasting faint.
That's a thing?
Yeah, and we'll get more into that later.
Okay.
I know I keep saying that.
Drink.
I do apologize that I keep saying we'll get more into that later, but I gotta spell it out for you guys. Okay, so the funeral was had shortly after, and I'm going to read a direct quote from The Greenbrier Ghost by Megan Atwood, because this just kind of describes how funerals were kind of held in that day. And I liked the wording of it, and I want to read it directly. In the Victorian era, mourning for a loved one was something people did in public. Visitations lasted for 3 or 4 days. In Appalachia, often when a person died, a local church bell would toll. Then the family would lay the body out to get it ready for the wake and burial. Family and friends would wash the body. They dressed the person in their best clothes. Sometimes a burial bedsheet, known as a shroud, would be used to cover the body. Then there would be a sitting up. During this time, people would visit the family and the body. Visitors would sing songs, they would bring food, and they would speak about their faith. This helped families to grieve for their loved ones.
But he already readied the body for
Yes.
burial.
So he didn't allow anyone else to help.
Not her family.
Nope. He did it all. He bathed, he cleaned, he dressed. No one else was allowed to even come close to her body.
That's one suspicious motherfucker.
And it's a little suspicious. After Zona's death, Trout refused to leave her side. Even when the undertakers came to move her, he was always there and seemed strangely concerned with her head and her neck, even shielding the view from others.
Gee, I wonder what's on her neck.
Yeah.
Bruises?
Uh-huh. The body was prepared for burial, with Trout assisting in preparation of her body and placing her in the casket, always handling her head. He had dressed her, as I said, in a high-necked dress for burial.
He's hiding them bruises.
Mm-hmm. He placed a folded sheet on one side of her head and an article of clothing on the other side of her head, which he said would make her rest easier.
Is her head falling off?
In addition, he tied a large scarf around her neck and explained, very tearfully, that it had been her favorite.
Is it tied real tight to stop her head from falling off?
First of all, they've only been married for 3 months. You haven't even known her long enough to know what scarf was her favorite.
I've been with my husband for 25 years, and I don't think he could tell you what my favorite of anything was.
Exactly. Zona was taken to the home of her mother, Miss Mary Jane Hester, and that was where the funeral was held. When the casket was open, Trout always remained at the head of the casket. The next day, her body was buried in the little cemetery on the hilltop.
So he's guarding this body so nobody can get close to the head at any time.
That's what it seems like. When Zona's mother first was told about her daughter's death, her first words were, "The devil has killed her."
The devil being Trout, I'm sure.
Yes. After the funeral, Mary tried to return the bedsheet to Trout, the shroud that covered her, but he refused to take it back. So Mary took it home to wash it, and when the sheet hit water, the water turned red, and a pink stain was revealed on the bedsheet.
Blood, obviously.
Yeah. Mary took this as a sign that her daughter's death was not an accident. She prayed with all of her might that Zona would somehow send her a sign of what really happened. And she didn't have to wait very long, Kelly.
Ooh.
Because Zona appeared to her mother shortly after her funeral. Now, Mary was woken up in the middle of the night by a bright light in her bedroom. As she looked at the light, the temperature in the room began to drop. Suddenly, she then saw the ghost of her daughter. At first, she was terrified, but she could tell that Zona was trying to tell her something, so she listened. Zona had visited her mother 4 nights in a row and told her what had happened to her. Zona told her mother that Trout was a cruel man and would lash out for no reason at all. He was even physically abusive to her during their very short marriage. Zona told her mother that the night she died, Trout had been in a mood. She had cooked him dinner, but Trout got mad when he realized that there wasn't any meat prepared for dinner.
He was not a fan of Meatless Monday.
No.
This is amazing communication between a spirit and a human.
I know, right?
Usually it's... So my dad had this experience after his mother passed away, where he was sitting in our living room in the middle of the night while he was awake, I don't know. And the whole room lit up in this bright white light. He said it was almost too bright to look at, but then he could also look at it.
Okay.
And he saw his mother when she was younger, and next to her was a little boy. Now, my dad had a brother who was stillborn.
Oh.
And that baby was the oldest baby of the family.
Okay.
And there was no verbal communication, but my dad took that as my grandmother saying, "I'm okay. Look, I'm here with your brother."
Oh.
My dad was also a raging alcoholic.
He was.
So I don't know if this was some kind of a alcoholic hallucination or if this was an actual experience.
Right.
But if it was an actual experience, there was not like, so this is what happened, John.
Yeah.
You know?
Right. There wasn't a lot of conversation. So when Trout got mad because there was no meat for dinner, he became so angry that he choked Zona to death. Mary even said that Zona's ghost proved to her that her neck had been broken by turning her head all the way around, exorcist style.
But she was a spirit.
She was. But still, that's got to be pretty disturbing to see.
I wouldn't want to see it.
No, me neither. Mary started by telling her family and, believed her. And then she started telling the neighbors. And they also believed her.
Interesting.
Now, I just want to say, this is in the late 1800s. What type of shitty human must you be if when someone comes out and tells all your neighbors that a ghost came back and told them that you murdered your wife, and they were all like, yeah, that tracks.
That's a good point.
It's like, yeah, okay. Yeah, that makes sense. You're not wrong. I mean, it just kind of shows what type of person Trout was. Mary and her brother-in-law, Johnson Hester, eventually were encouraged to go to the prosecutor, John A. Preston. Now, Preston was pretty skeptical initially, which, fair.
Yeah.
It seems kind of far-fetched. But they kind of convinced him after hours of discussion that at least further investigation was warranted.
That sounds reasonable.
Yeah, right? So the medical examiner, Dr. Knapp, who had declared Zona's death natural causes, reconsidered his initial assessment. And then they kind of dove a little deeper into Trout's past, which kind of revealed some disturbing things. Trout's previous marriages, as I said before, he had 2. And both of his marriages kind of were marked by some tragedy, right? So his first marriage was to Allie Estep. Allie basically endured just a tumultuous relationship marked by frequent conflict. An account suggests that Trout was often violent and temperamental. The marriage did end in divorce in 1889 when Trout was imprisoned for horse theft. And Allie alleged in the divorce proceedings that Trout was violent and abusive during their relationship. I do just want to say that I did read in some locations when I was researching that people said Allie died under suspicious circumstances, but I debunked that because I used Find My Grave and found Allie's grave, and she did not die under suspicious circumstances. She lived and died of old age.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know if it was old age, but she died much older after divorcing Trout. Now, his second marriage, I could not find a name for, but his second wife met a mysterious and fatal end while assisting him with chimney repairs. The story claims that she was positioning rocks in a basket, which Trout was hoisting up to the roof. Allegedly, the basket tipped and a rock fell, striking her on the head and killing her instantly.
That's totally what happened.
Totally. While this was officially deemed an accident, the incident did raise some questions about Trout's involvement due to the unusual nature and his history of aggressive behavior. So at this point, they decided that it was time to exhume Zona's body and do a proper medical examination. They exhumed the body and they had an inquest jury assembled. Now, Trout, despite objections, had to be present for this exhumation and, I guess, new autopsy. They did these examinations, funny enough, in a schoolroom.
Well, I mean, where else would
you do it? You just, plop a dead body that had already been buried in the ground on top of some children's desk and...
Well, you could gather some of the kids and give them a biology
lesson, right? I will say, as a former third grade teacher, a dead body would probably have not been the most disgusting thing on a student's desk.
I believe that.
Yeah. Been there, done that. The new autopsy findings were pretty damning. Zona's neck had been dislocated between the first and second vertebrae. Her windpipe was crushed, and bruises on her throat indicated strangulation.
No.
No, right?
You don't say.
I say. Now, if her neck had just been broken, they did attempt to make it look like she fell down the stairs.
That would have been believable.
Believable, but the bruises on her neck is kind of what shocked everybody. Now, these findings were made public, shocking everybody, but probably not really shocking everybody. And Trout Shue was arrested and charged with murder.
Amazing.
The prosecution's case was rooted in evidence from the exhumation of Zona's body, which again revealed that her neck was broken, showed clear signs of strangulation, including the finger marks and her crushed windpipe. Now, I said we were going to go back to the initial cause of death. The original cause of death for Zona was attributed the original was attributed to childbirth complications.
Wait. No. She died 3 months and 2 weeks after she married Trout.
Uh-huh.
And what was how long was it between the baby dying and the first guy leaving before she met Trout?
The first guy got married a year after the baby died, and she probably met Trout shortly after. So it's been a little more than a year.
It's been a year, 3 months, and 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Since this baby was born.
Mm-hmm.
But the original cause of death was...
Oh, no, they were claiming she was pregnant.
Oh, they were... Okay.
Yeah.
I thought you were going way back.
No.
What the hell is happening?
No, they claimed that she was pregnant and had a miscarriage, basically.
And that broke her neck?
Died, and that's how she died. Well, they didn't know she had a broken neck at the time.
Right.
That's how she died. Because again, people barely understand women's health care
now.
In 2025.
True.
So this was the late 1800s. People really didn't understand women's health care. She was a new bride. Of course, she was probably pregnant, because what else are women supposed to do besides pop out babies, right, and be a wife and a mother? So they said that initially, but no evidence supported it. And basically, there was a lot of irrelevant factors that kind of brought them to this. So Dr. Knapp, who was the local physician, only conducted, like I said, a very superficial inspection on her body, didn't even really get to touch her. And Trout's unusual behavior didn't allow him to do a proper investigation, so he didn't really have a lot of evidence to go on. So of course, again, in his head, she's probably pregnant, probably had a miscarriage and died. Because, what else?
It was just a woman. Why do we need to know the cause of death?
Exactly. It's just a woman. And then at the late 19th century, so at this time, the vague or natural causes of death, especially for women, were often accepted without a lot of scrutiny. Since Zona was young, recently married, likely assumed that she was pregnant, even though there were no real signs to this.
Now, the messed up thing is if it would have been Trout that died.
Yes.
And Zona had a distraught reaction to it, she would have been thrown in a mental institution immediately.
Immediately. Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah. Also, with Trout's interference, everything had to be conducted really quickly, and they didn't get to really investigate much further. So when questioned later, Knapp updated the cause of death to everlasting faint, which reflected the period's antiquated medical vocabulary and superstitions. The term was often used for any sudden unexplained death, such as a fainting spell or loss of consciousness that led to death. The term everlasting faint further reflected the medical limitations of gender bias of the era. Without any visible injuries, Dr. Knapp used the term to avoid further questioning and to justify his incomplete examination. Also, the time's assumptions of women's fragility, including the predisposition to fainting or hysteria, contributed to the wide acceptance of this cause of death. And again, Trout's interference during and after the examination kind of pushed Knapp to a very non-specific, non-incriminating conclusion. Ultimately, these combined factors kind of delayed that thorough investigation until Zona's body was exhumed weeks later, where, again, the autopsy revealed the true cause of death, strangulation, and broken neck. Despite the autopsy report, there was no direct evidence that linked Trout to the murder of his wife. So that made things a little challenging for the trial because all they had were the observations and witness testimonies of Trout after Zona's death and the word of a ghost.
That word of the ghost one's probably a big one.
Yeah. During the trial, the prosecution focused on the physical evidence while the defense tried to undermine Mary Jane's testimony about the ghostly visitations. Mary told the court every detail. The defense asked Mary if she was sure these visits were not just a dream. And Mary answered, yes, sir, it was not a dream. I don't dream when I'm wide awake, to be sure, and I know I saw her right there with me. Trout's behavior also raised some suspicion, as everybody saw his reaction after her death. He had a lot of odd conduct. He wouldn't leave her side. He wouldn't let anybody get too close to her head and neck, including putting the scarf around her neck and kind of all that. When Trout was questioned, he rambled for hours. This made the local newspaper, which was the Greenbrier Independent, and they wrote that Trout had made, and I quote, unfavorable impression on the jury. The paper also reported that Trout denied everything the witnesses said he did after Zona's death. Reportedly, after he was done being questioned, he faced the jury and said, look at my face and tell me I'm guilty.
Guilty. I'm sorry. What does that even mean? It's so stupid.
Right? And the fact that he was just sitting there denying everything that everybody had said. Like, all these witnesses were coming up and saying, oh yeah, he was really acting strange. He wouldn't leave her head and neck alone. He was really supporting it around all this time. And he's like, I didn't do that.
Look at my face.
Look at my face.
I didn't do it.
Tell me I'm guilty. You're guilty. He also told a fellow inmate that he had the lifelong goal of having 7 wives.
Well, if you want to have 7 wives, you've got to kill off a couple first.
You got to kill a couple of them.
Yeah.
You can't get them all to leave you by just abuse.
Seriously, during that time, it would be very hard because women weren't afforded the opportunity to get out of something like that.
The fact that his first wife was able to divorce him was shocking in itself.
I wonder if he didn't abandon her.
Well, he went to jail.
Oh, that's right. He did go to jail.
Yeah.
That's right. Okay.
So that's how she was able to. If he didn't go to jail, she probably wouldn't have been able to. He also told this same inmate that they will not be able to prove I did it.
This sounds like O.J.
That's what I was
Simpson
going to say.
writing a book saying, if I did it.
If I did it. Oh, boy, just shut up. Come on. Trout lawyers really tried to paint Mary as some crazy old lady, saying who would actually admit to seeing a ghost. But Mary's unwavering testimony had seemed to be enough for the jury. The jury found Trout guilty of first-degree murder after deliberating for just over 1 hour.
Yeah, they already knew.
Yeah, they knew going in there.
They were like, let's just take a break before we go back in.
We're just going to sit and chill, talk about what an awful person he was.
Drink a cup of coffee.
Yeah, and he made us sit through hours of his rambling. We're going to make him sit and sweat a little bit. Now, he was sentenced to life in prison, but he only spent 3 years in jail.
Please tell me he's dead.
He's dead.
Good.
Yeah. He died under unclear circumstances.
Oh, it was everlasting fate.
Yeah, it was everlasting fate. Some reports suggest that he succumbed to natural causes, such as illness, but there's no real definitive documentation about the exact cause of his death. Given that Trout was in his mid-40s at the time of his death, some speculate that the conditions in prison combined with his past lifestyles and possible health issues may have contributed to his premature passing. But the lack of public records from that time about his death does leave a lot of questions unanswered, and his legacy remains tied to the infamous Greenbrier Ghost case. Now, sources that mention his death include historical crime archives and local West Virginia publications about the case, but specifics are also pretty vague. And I kind of found that with a lot with this case. There was a lot of very vague things. Just in general.
It was the 1800s.
Yeah.
The probably record keeping wasn't
as
the
good.
best.
Yeah, it was hard to find a lot of information. The story of Zona Hester Shue, often referred to as the Greenbrier Ghost, remains a captivating blend of mystery, crime, and the supernatural. It is a tale where justice hinged not only on forensic evidence, but also on the extraordinary claim of a mother who believed her daughter's ghost revealed the truth. The trial of Trout Shue brought a murderer to justice, but also highlighted the cultural limitations and biases of the time, both in medicine and law. Zona's story lingers not just as a ghost tale, but as a testament to love, resilience, and the belief that truth will always find its voice, even if it takes a little otherworldly help. And that brings us to the end of this episode about the story of Zona Hester Shue, the Greenbrier Ghost.
If you loved what you've heard, please take a moment to rate, review, and subscribe to our podcast wherever you listen. Your support helps us reach more listeners and share even more spooky stories.
Yeah, and you can follow us on Instagram at notmyghostpodcast and on Facebook at notmyghost, not my problem. We post a ton of stuff and it's really fun. So you should follow us.
You should, because you're going to see lots of pictures and fun things from just this week of us being together.
Well, this will be like a month ago. But go back, follow us, and then go back a month.
Right.
And then you'll see all the fun shenanigans.
If you want even more ghostly content, consider joining our Patreon. We have some fantastic exclusive perks for our supporters.
Yes, please do. We have a Discord for just our supporters, and we get on there and talk to you.
And our patrons get a...
Blah, blah, blah.
Our patrons get a mini bonus episode every month.
Every month.
And we are about to kick off our live that we are going to do with our patrons.
Yeah, because we have 2 patrons that are in our top tier of donors. So they get a live session with us every month.
They do.
And we're like, Q-list celebrities. So.
Oh, Q. We're up to Q?
I don't remember what I said the last time.
And if you have ever had a spine-tingling paranormal encounter, share your story with us at notmyghostpodcast@gmail.com. And you just might hear it featured on a future episode.
Please do, because we currently have 5 stories in our inbox, and we are going to be recording a Paranormal Postcards episode this weekend. And we need more stories to hopefully bring you another one in April, because we're trying to do one every other month. So send us your spooks.
Please.
We love them. Thank you for joining us on this exciting journey of the Greenbrier Ghost. Remember, the next time you want to commit a crime, keep this in mind.
If it's not your ghost,
it may still be your problem.
Until next time, stay spooky
and stay skeptical.